Hello, everybody. Welcome to Game Audio Hour number 80. It's our weekly podcast where we discuss all things game audio, from creative ideas to the latest techniques, project experiences to audio secrets. Here's where you'll find your in-depth coverage and opinions related to Alex May. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. I know I always start by talking about the weather, but I must talk about the weather today because for the last 2 weeks we've been having unreasonably fine weather. So I'm a little concerned that this is going to be short-lived and it's going to rain very soon. It's been cool in the shade, warm in the sun, blue skies, not a cloud to be seen. I have to say, for anybody who ever has the opportunity to come to Japan, come to West Japan and take a special notice of the sky. It's extraordinarily beautiful at times. They have this you have to get that stereotypical image of Asia, where you've got the sort of yellowy haze with the clouds like that and this big round sun. It actually looks like that at times.
That's awesome.
It's pretty incredible. So anyway, how are you, Carl?
I'm doing good. I am about to crack open a fresh bottle of scotch. Old Pulteney, my absolute favorite.
Old Pulteney.
Old Pulteney. Made to look like a still. Kind of cool that the bottle looks like a still. Got it yesterday. Excited to have a drink and relax with you fine gentlemen. That was going to include Vince, but he suddenly had some browser issues right before we started it, so he'll probably pop in. As I said to Alex in the green room, I am convinced he'll make it.
Yeah, that's good, Carl. That's hilarious.
Vince
is using.
I'll be here all night.
It's funny that we're using Google Hangouts with Google's YouTube. And Vince is using Google Chrome, and it's not working for him.
Yeah, I'm using Safari, and it works. You're using Opera, and it works.
Why am I using Opera still? I don't know. I used to be a sort of fairly dedicated Firefox user. Dedicated, as in just couldn't be bothered switching to anything else. And then I was reading up about some history about the Opera browser, and the company, even though the product is not so well known and, has a certain kind of reputation, when you look at their legacy and what they've done for browser development, they're the guys who first did tabbed browsing. They're also the guys who first did CSS and a lot of other sort of interesting stuff. This is kind of neat stuff. So for the last month or 2 months, I've been on Opera and I'm still here. And I don't know why. It's very unnerving. It's kind of like changing your DAW and then finding that you sort of like the second one better.
Well, you're preaching to the choir. Back in the day, I had a BIOS machine. Do you know what BIOS is?
Oh, I certainly do.
And Opera was the browser of choice for that. And that was my only computer for probably a year. But it was also the height of my computer gaming, and I got bored with not being able to play the games I wanted to play. So I went back to, at that time, PC. But the Opera browser came with me when I crossed back over into PC world.
Well, there you go. I think, actually, that's a beautiful segue right there into our first topic that we're thinking of talking about. Right. But first, before we do that, we should make a new little custom here at the start of the show, greeting all the lovely, fantastic people in the chat room. We have the magnanimous, AKA _ADR, otherwise known as AKA, also known as AKA, I should say.
And to his family, he's known as ADR.
That's right, which is automatic ducking. No, something reduction. No,
resonance.
Resonance. Auto ducking resonance. And we have Ali Love. Ali, what do you call the vertical bar?
Oh, man, I used to know that word.
Let's call her Ali Vertical Bar Love. And CB, who, of course, we all know is the gregarious.
Are you going to go down the whole list, or should we get started?
Omnipotus, I can't think of any other adjectives to describe. The mighty Chase. And we have the fantastic Matt M. and Valerie. Hello, Valerie.
Are you filibustering to get Vince in the room?
No, I'm just I thought it'd be nice that every week we are privileged to be in the presence of such fine people in the chat room. So we should probably just give them a little bit of a shout out at the start of the show.
You make a great point. Absolutely. Thank you, everybody, for joining in. So what is the first topic there, Alex? Which one do you want to start with? Because we've got a few. I want you to start with one specifically because you won't tell me what it is.
Oh, Vince is here. I think Vince has made it back in.
To those listening, Vince, you'll see Vince. You don't see this because you're listening instead of watching, but Vince drops in and out and in and out. The poor guy. Oh, I think he's finally made it. So maybe in the audio world you hear the clickety clack of the coming and goings of Vince, but he's struggling to get back in with his browser and microphone working.
Yeah, he's on mute at the moment. When there's this huge thunderclap, you'll know that Vince Diamante has arrived.
That's right. It's like.
But looking at his face, he looks a little bit vexed.
He looks intense. There he is. It's like, what is going on, and why did they just zoom in on me? Anyway, Alex.
Yes.
What do you want to talk about? Give me that first one.
All right. So everybody, I'm just going to do a bit of a screen share here. So I'm just going to. There are 3 really nice sales on right at the moment. Where you can get some very expensive, very capable, very excellent plugins for cheap prices. And I thought many of you may be aware of these already. I'm just going to do a little bit of a screen share here. All right, the first one. All right, can you see that all right?
Not yet. Still transferring. There it is. Let me.
Okay, so we are at the PSP site. So this is PSP Echo. This is a tape delay plugin, and it is currently, I think, for about the next 6, or at least until the morning in Poland, because PSP is from Poland. I think it's about let's see, $29.
What?
Down from $99.
Dang, that's a good price.
And it's only on sale for the next, I think about 4 or 5 hours. So you should probably do it right out of the show. Don't do it now. Wait until the show is over.
Oh, I'm already gone.
Let me just give you a quick description. So this is PSP Echo, and as anybody, it's not really much of the screenshot's a bit small, but basically it's a tape delay. However, I've been needing a good sort of solid go-to delay plugin, and with a little bit more functionality than the default, tap delay in Renoise, but something that's quick and easy to use. And PSP, everybody knows PSP. PSP is known for Vintage Warmer, of course, and they've got a whole bunch of other plugins. That is a plugin company that just sort of keeps on. They're not that glamorous, it doesn't look, super. It's not like FabFilter stuff where it's all kind of, trendy and stuff. It's sort of fairly bare bones industrial kind of. What's the right word? It's not coming to me. Not pragmatic. Anyway, functional. Anyway, so it's a tape delay. It has 1 or 2 interesting features that you don't get on many tape delays. And one of them, if in the top right-hand corner, you probably can't read that, but there is a button here that says Ducker. And what Ducker does when you turn that on, there's some settings there that allows you to almost effectively sidechain your input on top of the delay output.
Nice.
So you can have an extremely... It's not as simple as just having a dry and a wet mix, which of course you have down the bottom in the center, as you can see there. It means you can have an extreme delay, which is ducked out by the source signal. So that means that no matter how intense your delay signal gets, you'll still have the dry signal clearly audible there. So that it means that it gives you the capability of doing some really interesting ducking effects, especially with slapbacks and stuff like that. And more than anything, it's just really simple and quick to get good results. So you've got the other tape delay kinds of stuff that you would expect, like tape speed and wow, and there's also drive. There's some filters there on the left and the right channels, and it's just all around just a sort of very functional, quick, easy to use delay. And it's only $29 right now, so you better get it after the show. Next. Now, this is an up-and-coming developer from France called Tritic. And Tritic currently has 2 plugins available. This is TK Delay. There's another delay plugin, and this is going for 29 euros, which is about 30, I think it's about $39 US, roughly.
Nice.
Down from 49 euros. And this is also the delay, unlike the PSP Echo, which is sort of a very musical, functional kind of thing. This one is designed for a bit more effects. You've got filter, you've got modulation, you can see here, frequency shifting, reverse. So if you want to actually reverse your delay signal, it's kind of cool for that. And the other standard stuff like ping pong. Filters, you can see here, you've got some options for routing the filters back into themselves and an LFO. So it's a much more special effect oriented delay, very cheap. But actually, on a lot of forum posts like KVR and Gear Slots and those ones, they when you have threads asking about good quality go-to delays, this one often comes up. TK delay. People seem to sort of like its stripped down functionality and really useful for various special effects.
It looks like chromophone. Are they related to AAS at all?
Well, if AAS, I think AAS are from Canada, aren't they?
I don't know.
I think,
well, their website is in French or English, so they could be Canadian, of course.
Right. Well, Tritic is French, so this must be what people who speak French like in the plugin design.
And German, because it's kind of Abletonish.
Right. So Tritic actually also has another one called Moodle, which they've just released, which is an introductory price of 35 euros. Ooh. This one I haven't quite wrapped my head around. It's I haven't bought it, but it's like a modal convolution effect, where you have accurate control over the different what do you call this in comb modal? It's modal synthesis essentially, and allows you to get some very interesting sort of reverb style effects. Have a look at it. There's a demo here, and down the bottom there's some examples from SoundCloud you can see here. Nice. So that's Tritic. Now the third one. Oh, by the way, this is the TK delays on sale until 15th of November. So you have a bit more time for that one if you're interested. There's a demo available there too.
I'll put this in the show notes as well.
Now this one, this is the Marg Audio EQ2. Now usually this is $149. If you are a member of Plugin Alliance, which you should be because they do excellent stuff, Marg Audio EQ2 is currently $69, which is a considerable saving over $149. There's a 2-week trial that you can try. Just be aware with a 2-week trial that don't get stung by it like I did. You only have one chance to trial it. You trial it for 2 weeks, and then if you decide, several months down the line that you want to trial it again, you can't. So that's just something to be wary of. But what is the EQ2? It is a software model of the famous, I think it's called the Marg Audio something 500, which is...
I have both the EQ2 and the EQ4 in my lunchbox.
Oh, excellent. Well,
500 series hardware devices. They have the famous Airband, and I would like to add the EQ2 and the EQ4 work really well together. Some people think the EQ4 replaces the EQ2. It doesn't. If you look at the bands that you can affect, they're slightly different between the two of them. So together they create this really wide bandwidth that you can play with.
Yeah, it's basically it's a boost-only 2-band EQ. So if you have a look on the controls on this massive screenshot we have here, there's like a low boost which can go up to 1400 hertz with 2 different bell types. You've got a wide bell and a narrow bell, boosting to 10. I believe 10. I guess that's 10 dB. And then you've got the famous airband. Why is it famous and why is it called an airband? Probably because not many other EQs go up as high as 40,000 hertz. So
well, the way Moog does it too. I mean, Moog sounds better than any other stuff that I've used that gets up in that area. It sounds, they use that term musical maybe too much, but it doesn't sound artificial when you're trying to boost up there, and it can easily sound a little MP3-ish or artificial when you're boosting up in that area. Right.
So the top band goes down to 2500 hertz and goes up to 40,000 hertz. So with like really supersonic stuff. And on the very left, you'll see there's an input attenuation. So basically, it's deceptively versatile, this kind of plugin. I really like these sort of simple character EQs that have sort of deceptive versatility to them, because you could create, if you wanted to make sort of like a low cut, what all you'd need to do is just turn up the airband and then turn down the input attenuation, and you've sort of got like a low cut. If you're wanting to create like a high cut, then you do the same thing. Turn up the low band, turn down the input attenuation, then you've got like a high cut. So even though it is boost only, effectively, you can use the input attenuation to bring the level of the whole EQ down to create cuts as well.
Mm-hmm.
One plugin which I'm just going to bring
Now,
up
I
here.
thought they had the EQ4 on sale right now. How much is this on sale for?
This one was $69.
Normally what, 100 and something?
Normally $149.
So the EQ2 is $600, I think, in the 500 series. The EQ4 is $850. Looking. Yeah, $600 for the EQ2. So you can get the software version for $69 right now.
That's right. One other plugin, which is it's not on sale at the moment, but which is sort of similar, and is Sonomus's Sweet Tone. This is usually $32, so it's very, very affordable. And this is a tilt EQ, which I use a lot. It's, as you can see, high pass, low pass, tone in the middle. Turn to the left, you get it's a tilt EQ, so you get a high boost. Turn to the right, you get a high boost. Turn to the left, you get a low boost. Has a loud mode, which makes it sort of like a smiley face EQ. I love this. On the left here, you probably can't see it, but there's blow on the high pass. It's actually, this is one of my favorite EQ plugins because the high pass, you know, if you're working with synths and stuff like that, you're always going to be wanting to high pass out unnecessary lows created by analog emulations. And the blow adds this nice kind of fairly narrow bump onto the high pass filter. So if you're wanting to use this on like a bass drum or something, like a kick, you can cut out the deep lows and use the blow to emphasize just where you want the punch.
I do it all the time, especially with VO, when you're trying to get some bass out of somebody's voice, and then it's so easy when you start to add bass that now you've got all this unwanted rumble that happens in the low end, and so I have to cut that back.
Right.
And sure enough, I'm always bumping right where the cut is just to get more bass right before it cuts out.
Right, right. That's why this, yeah, so you got the blow, which will give you that bump here. You got 12 dB per octave and 6 dB per octave, so two slopes there for the low cut. The 6 dB per octave a high pass filter on this is really nice. It's really gentle, really sort of, again, you know, we hesitate to use the word musical, but it is really musical and just very useful. Pump up the gain to about about plus 5 dB, and you get some nice sort of very, very gentle, warm overtones added as well. This is one of my favorite plugins for really quick, kind of like preamp style EQing. But it's not on sale. It is cheap though, $32.
Cheap is good.
This is good. So this was $69, Mag EQ2 from Plugin Alliance.
Now, is Mag EQ4 on sale as well?
No, I don't think so. We can just have a look here while we're here. I think that's because, yeah, you have to actually be a member. So the prices on the site here on Plugin Alliance are they don't list the sale price because you need to be a member. Here's the webpage for the EQ4.
Gosh, I'm going to check my email because I feel like they sent me an email saying that it was on sale. Not that I don't believe you. I can clearly see that on their website it's not on sale, but for some reason my brain's telling me that I saw something about it being on sale.
Right. So
it was a special case.
Of the three, are you seeing me now? Yes, you are. Good.
I'm seeing you.
Of the three, I picked up PSP Echo because the Mag EQ, I don't know. I think with character EQs, you do get into a tendency of collecting too many of them, thinking that this is going to solve all of my EQ issues. You know, this is the one that I need. That it's like my go-to.
Did you say EQ issues, as in one word, EQ shoes?
EQ shoes. It's kind of like tissues.
That's pretty good.
Chase is asking the name of that last EQ. That was Sonomus Sweet Tone. So sweet and tone, but with one T. Sweet Tone.
Sweet.
Yeah. So I decided to go with PSP Echo in the end, just because I was looking for a real quick go-to but functional, versatile delay plugin with musical features. And that ducker is really useful. So check those three plugins out.
I like the bump you were talking about. Man.
The Sweet Tone, yeah. This is like it's $32. I mean, really.
Yeah.
It's I'm all for supporting these smaller plugin developers. So I like the fact that TrickDick is from France, PSP are from Poland, and Sonomus are from Brazil.
Nice.
I think it's Brazil. It's either I think it was Brazil. No, was it Brazil or Portugal, something related to Portuguese anyway.
Is Vince officially in? Vince, are you hearing us and seeing us?
I can hear you, and can you hear me?
You're very quiet.
Yeah, it's very quiet, but we can hear you.
Yeah, sorry, I'm on my phone. My laptop is failing me, and my computer is failing me. It was stuck shutting down, but enough of that. You guys keep on going.
All right. Well, if we cut to you, we might want to get you closer to your phone so that the mic is getting a richer version of Vince.
All right, all right.
So, Alex, those are awesome sales, fantastic news. Thank you very much. Also, I'd like to add to that Sound Toys right now came out with Sound Toys 5, and so if you have Sound Toys and you go to your account on their website, you can check off the box of the things that you own, and the price for the upgrade keeps going down. My upgrade to Sound Toys 5 went down to $85, and here's what's really cool about that. I had all of their light versions of not all of the light versions. I mean, I had the whole suite, and then they kept adding stuff on, and I just kept getting the free light version. So it was like light micro shift and light radiator and all this. Or what? No, they called them little radiator, little micro shift. And when I did the $85, I had all the full blown versions. So not only did it save you a bunch of money, but I didn't have to pay the upgrade from the little version to the big version as well. So for $85, I got the rack, I got all my old plugins that I used anyway, and the super versions of all the free ones that I was using. So I definitely would suggest checking that out. And I think today is the last day that you can get the $200 off on Isotope RX, our sponsor. For RX5 Advanced is offering a discounted price right now, not only just for Advanced, but I think all the RX options. And it's now, I'm going to look it up really quickly. It's got a day left, maybe two left with their sale price. Did you guys see that as well?
That was Isotope.
Yeah, so it's $299 for RX5 audio right now through October 28th. So that means you have 2 days to get it at that price. Or if you want to go crazy and get the audio or RX5 Advanced, which comes with Insight. I guess we should just say right now that we want to thank our sponsor, Isotope, for supporting the show and talk about the awesome software that they're putting out. And the sale for RX5 Advanced, which also comes with Insight, and I use that almost more than I use RX5. It is permanently fixed in my master chain. That is $999 right now. But again, upgrade prices are also benefiting from this sale. So just jump into your login on their website and see what you can get it for. Thank you, Isotope, for supporting the show.
The Vince seems to be dropping in and out.
He does. He does. Well, we'll just keep going without him, and hopefully he'll get in strong. This is I can tell by his picture right now that it's his computer. But this is boring for people who are listening, so I don't want to just. Oh wait, maybe we can hear you better, Vince. Is this working better? Oh, poor Vince.
This is the phone.
Oh gosh darn it, Vince. I'm so sorry the microphone is still too light. You keep trying, and we'll just keep pushing forward, and we'll get you in on the next topic. And if nothing else, Vince, chat in the chat room about like things that are going on with your opinions on stuff that we're going to move on to, right, Alex?
Yes, we are. So we were discussing in the green room before, I think, how did it come up? Mike was talking about Ultima 4. And we don't want to go...
Vince and I were slacking about old games too, and yeah, I love this topic. Let's hit it.
Yeah, I mean, we don't want to. I think we've done the games that we love from the past before, so we don't want to dwell too much on it. But sound off, everybody, in your chat room about games that you miss. So what does that actually mean? Games that you miss.
So what I was thinking was these are games that aren't being created anymore. So, if you say, oh, I miss the original Zelda, well, Zelda is still being made. So, yeah, we all miss the original Zelda, but this is a game that nobody's still making that you loved so much in the past that you would be willing to sit down and go play that game right now just to kind of remember it.
Okay, well, I have one. Games are not being made on the Amiga, the group, the Bitmap Brothers, they're arguably their most famous game, and one of the iconic games from the Commodore Amiga was Speedball 2. And the reason that I mention it is that it's time and time again, people have tried to make remakes of Speedball 2, and nobody has ever been able to come up to the level of the original.
Did anybody try to remake Speedball 1?
No, because, well, I guess they did themselves, didn't they? Yeah, because Speedball 1 was good, but it was just like laying the groundwork for Speedball 2, which was an absolute classic. And it's sort of like, for those who don't know, it's a typical futuristic 16-bit style sports game, kind of loosely based on handball, American football, and I guess soccer, I suppose, where you got these sort of tough guys that you can upgrade their body armor and stuff like that, who they're throwing this metallic ball around to each other. So, Speedball 2, there have been, I think, maybe 4 or 5 attempts to remake it because it was so good on the original on the Commodore Amiga, but every one of them has failed. And they fail for different reasons. Like, some of them try to make the graphics all kind of, you know, current day. That doesn't really sort of work. You know, I mean, the original graphics were just good as they were. Upgrade the graphics doesn't really improve the gameplay in this case, because it's the gameplay that was core.
Don't tell Activision that. They've been doing that with Call of Duty for quite a few years.
Right. The second area where remakes of the game seem to fall over is they tweak the gameplay and they tweak the handling, the way the characters feel. So the controls are really simple. Basically, when you don't have the ball, you press the button, your character will do a sliding tackle.
Nice.
When you do have the ball and you press it, because the Amiga only had one button, press the button lightly, then they'll throw it low. If you press the button, if you kind of hold it down, then they throw it really high.
So you're saying they had a velocity-sensitive button, like a keyboard?
Not really. I think it's just dependent on how the time between button in and button out.
Oh.
They're measuring that, and so if you hold it down longer, then they throw it high.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
And if you're underneath the ball and you tap the button, then they'll jump up and grab it. And those were the only controls. And so remakes of Speedball 2 have tampered with things like how far that you can slide, how much you tumble after you've slid. Slidden?
Slided.
Slided. Yeah. And none of them seem to get on point with the charm of the original. And the third thing, this is vital and relevant to us,
all right,
is the sound design.
Was it good?
The sound design in the original was so good and so iconic. But the thing is that any video that you watch of Speedball 2 and any remake of it will emphasize one sample, which is like when you're in the arena, you get this kind of boomy. There's somebody selling ice cream in between the plays, and he goes, "Ice cream," like that. It's funny because, you know, from a game audio point of view, yes, it's great that people latch onto an iconic sound from a game like that, but it's almost like, oh, we have that sample in our remake, so we're legitimate.
Oh, whatever. Yeah.
It's not just that sound. You know, that sound is very iconic from the game, but the other sounds in the game, like the sounds of when you tackle somebody, the sounds of when people fall over, and more than anything, there's this really satisfying visceral ka-chink when you get the ball in the goal. The closest remake that I've got to the original Speedball 2 is Speedball 2 on the iPad.
What?
Because what they did is a company called Tower Games. They make sort of emulations of classic games. Yeah. I think it's called Tower Games. They're also based in Poland, which is great to see. You know, game companies doing good stuff in lesser-known locations of the world, like Poland. It's sort of like a one-to-one emulation of the original, so it's extremely accurate. Except they forgot that sample.
No way.
They forgot that sample, so you slam the ball into the goal at the end. It goes ka-chink in the original, but in the new version, you just hear the crowd roar and you hear the guy doing this little dance, and then you get the ice cream. So I'm like, no, The most vital part of the game is that ka-chink, yes!
It was copy protected. They weren't allowed to use it. It hasn't been 20 years. It wasn't Creative Commons.
Possibly.
Oh, by the way,
possibly.
Speedball 2 HD on Steam by Tower Studios.
I think I don't know if that's the one of the other failed remakes. This is a case of a game where you could just release the game exactly as it is, which is kind of what they did with the iPad version, except they missed a few vital details, and it would take off.
That's awesome. You got another one, or is that the one? Is that the one?
Yeah, I have one more.
Okay.
This doesn't really qualify as a game that isn't being made anymore, because it is being made, and I just bought the updated version, and that's the reason why I wanted to talk about it.
This is sacrilege. You can't do that.
I know, but I just want to get this in here because I've been playing a lot of this game, and it's fantastic, and also very relevant to game audio.
All right.
That game is Elite Dangerous. Oh my, Elite. So, okay, the original Elite, for those who don't know.
Didn't you just talk about this last week?
No, I don't think I did. I think I talked about how I wanted to play it, but
I'm teasing you.
Anyway, I got it now.
Okay.
So for those who don't know, firstly, shame on you, because the original Elite was, an absolute classic on many of the very early 8-bit computers. Am I right? So we've got the BBC, the Commodore 64, the Apple II, the Amstrad, the Atari ST. These, are they 8-bit? Yes, they are 8-bit, aren't they? That's right, isn't it?
I don't know.
Yeah. Anyway, amazing. Firstly, amazing that you can have this massive, expansive universe with millions of stars, all with their own profiles, information, trade information, political climates, all in 64K.
That's awesome.
That's simply, they do it through procedural generation. So basically, setting the same seed with the same procedural generating algorithm will always produce the same results. And so they take this big table of numbers that come out of this procedural generator, and then pull out of that data that they need, reference it to a table of words and locations, and they get the same results every time, and that's how they get this.
Wow.
I mean, he is David Braben, is one guy behind it from the original Elite.
What's it called again? Elite Dangerous, right?
Yeah, so the original game is Elite, absolute classic.
Okay.
The second version was called Frontier Elite, which was on 16-bit systems like the PC and also the Commodore Amiga.
Mm-hmm.
And Frontier Elite added on to the original Elite. Basically, I haven't actually said what the game is about. For those who don't know, it's a space trading. It's a space trading game where you have a ship, and you start at a spaceport. You have a look at a galaxy map, look at where you're going, see what the things they might need in the system that you're going to, like whether they need medical supplies or whether they need, industry parts or whatever. Buy them if they're going for cheap at the current space. Then, leave the station, go to hyperspace. There's space combat. You may meet pirates who want your cargo, land on the starport, and then sell your stuff for a premium, get extra money, upgrade your ship, upgrade your weapons. Great stuff. Frontier Elite.
Isn't that CCP Games? Didn't they do? Isn't that their big thing? Like a space.
If they did, I imagine that Elite might have been there first.
Well, I don't think they did Elite Dangerous, obviously, or Elite, but CCP Games, their big game. Why is it escaping me right now?
Is it Star Citizen? No.
No. Oh my God, Eve Online is kind of like a giant. Sounds like
right.
Elite Dangerous.
Yeah. So anyway, Elite was done by Frontier, is the name of the company that does it. Frontier Elite added landing on planets, asteroid mining, and a whole bunch of other cool stuff. And then we had nothing from Frontier for a long time, and people thought that the game, was not going to live again. They ran a Kickstarter several years ago, and Elite Dangerous is the result.
That's where I've heard of it.
Right. It's so I just bought it, and firstly, the reason I'm talking about it so long-windedly is because the audio in Elite Dangerous is really good.
Yeah.
Really good. They use what?
Please do again. I'm not saying to stop. I'm just saying this sounds familiar.
Yeah. Just the quality of the audio, the amount of detail that they put into the sounds of your ship to give it this real sense of just realism is the only thing you can. It's like all these sort of mechanical clunks and clinks, and sort of the music is fantastic. The music is scored by a guy from Sweden. The audio is done by the Frontier team who make the game at in Cambridge in the UK. It's just if you check out videos on YouTube of Elite, you'll hear most of the sounds. They're just superb sounds.
Is that your last? Is that the one? Is that like you have 2, or do you have 5, 6? I mean, what do you got?
No, that would have to be it. So that was one classic game that is not being made anymore, which was actually the topic, and then one game that has just been remade several years ago and that is absolutely superb. So
I gotta check it out. I don't want you to stop. If you got more, keep going.
No, basically, I mean, the only other ones that I could offer are the stuff that I think we've mentioned before and that is, very well known. It's like Turrican 2 on the Amiga had the classic Chris Hillsbeck soundtrack. Like, again, one of the most iconic sort of Amiga game anthems.
But it was over a year ago when we had this topic last, so we've got new viewers and all kinds of stuff. So feel free to dig in.
Right. Another game that I was playing recently. I guess it counts as games that's not being made anymore. Is Wonder Boy in Monsterland.
Oh my God!
Had an excellent soundtrack, and also one other one which fans of the SNES, the Super Nintendo, might recognize.
Famicom.
Yeah, well, I'm living in Japan, so I'm allowed to say that.
Exactly.
There's a game called Do Re Mi Fantasy, which is Do Re Mi Fantasy in English.
Oh, cool. All right.
It's a Hudson game, and it's got a long name. It's called Do Re Mi Fantasy Milon no Doki Doki Adventure. Doki Doki Daiboken, which means the Milon's nerve-wracking big adventure. If you search for Do Re Mi Fantasy and SNES, you'll be able to pick it up on an emulator. It's a 16-bit platformer, cute, very typical Japanese, and it was actually only ever released in Japan. The sound in this game is superb. The music's good. I find the music sometimes drifts a little bit away from. It's trying a little bit too hard to be a bit progressive. It's like not playing around with the idea of what you're not expecting. Mm-hmm. Which, for a game that looks like this does, which is very cute and sort of very typical Japanese, colorful and bubbly, I don't know that it's really necessary to be that sort of progressive when just a solid, memorable, happy soundtrack would have been good enough. But the sound effects are really, really superb. So just real good quality 16-bit platforming action. So that franchise, there's never been a follow-up for that. It was by Hudson.
That's what got me started thinking about this whole thing was that Vince sent me something, and it was on a Dreamcast. Oh, there was a game design I have that I'm not saying online, and Vince said it kind of reminded him of another game. He sent me a link, and the link was on a Dreamcast. And I jokingly said to Vince, "What's a Dreamcast?" just to see if I could piss him off. He's shaking his head at me in the video. You guys can't hear. But I had a Sega Genesis in all of the iterations, and that was my real love of console games. And the two on there that I just would sit down, this conversation with Vince got me thinking, I would sit down right now and play Thunder Force, which I loved. It was an awesome overhead shooter where you just, like, it was kind of like Zaxxon on steroids, you just flew over things and blew them up. But what was really cool was the power-ups of all the guns you got. Like, there was this one gun that shot rings out of every position off of your spaceship, and it just threw stuff everywhere. That was a super awesome, destructive. It's kind of like the early days of the Burnout series, which I was lucky to get to work on a little bit, where you just run your car into a cross section of traffic, and you just see the money tally up. To see the whole idea of that Burnout is that how much you destroy, it costs millions of dollars, and you've done better and better. And with Thunder Force, it was all about just blowing everything up. But what I really loved about Thunder Force is they would side scroll the boss battles. I remember this one boss battle had this giant face, and you had to just go up and down, and it shot stuff out of its mouth, stuff came around from behind, and you had to constantly avoid it. Thunder Force was really, really cool. The other one, though, that I played the crap out of on my Sega Genesis, and I would sit down to do it today, and we have talked about a year ago, was Arcus Odyssey, which I still have in my top 5 all-time games. That was just... The music is what made that game for me. And you guys told me who the composer was. He did... oh, I don't have my Xbox games in here. He did Dark... What's it called? Dark something? RPG game out of Japan. Dark Souls? He composed for Dark Souls. Who's that? What's that guy's name?
Vince will know. Vince, you with us?
Is Vince telling us? Anyway, he also did Arcus Odyssey, and that is one of my favorite game soundtracks because it's just really, it's not about the music, it's about the feeling. It's like when you were in the middle of doing something that wasn't necessarily dangerous, it wasn't full of action, but you were trying to find something. The music was just perfect in those moments, and then the battle music was perfect. And so, a lot of people kind of phone in the regular just walking around music, and then they hit you with the battle scenes that are really epic and fantastic. And I find a little too much of that happening today, unfortunately, if I had to speak honestly. But with this game, even the mundane music was right on point. It was really, really interesting and very enjoyable, and it really kind of drove me forward. If I'd get bored, I never got bored of the music, that was for sure. And that was a great, oh my God. So Matt Uhlman said in the chat room,
Motoi Sakaruba.
Both of those, Gesundheit. I can't say any of those names. So that person with those names did that fantastic music. I love it. Fantastic game. But those were what got me thinking about the topic. Dropping a link in the chat room, if I had to say a game that I would sit down and play for hours regardless, is pretty much any of the Gold Box games from SSI. And I'm not talking when they crossed over into I just lost the term. God damn it, I'm old. I just lost the stupid word. I hate when that happens. But anyway, so this style of Gold Box games. Alex, are you familiar with Gold Box games?
I'm not actually. Tell me all about it.
So Pool of Radiance was the first of these Gold Box games, and they were kind of like the first games. I think I say kind of like because I'm not sure, but I'm fairly sure that they were the first time that Dungeons and Dragons came to the computer, and it was the Dungeons and Dragons rule set. It was the Dungeons and Dragons worlds that and as an old D&D player, I was super excited to get them. So I'm living in Germany, and I'm going to college, and I'm also in the Air Force, and my parents are saying, you must come home every opportunity you get. We miss the hell out of you, and Pool of Radiance came out. They didn't see me for like 2 years. Screw that. I swear to God, that's a true story. I said, no, I'm going to stay in my apartment in Trier, or no, I was in Moorbach at the time, and I am going to sit on this couch, and I'm going to play Pool of Radiance, and then I'm going to play Curse of the Azure Bonds, and I just played. I took a whole month of vacation just playing these games on my Commodore 60. No, I had a 128. Anyway, those games are fantastic, and they grew into becoming Baldur's Gate is what I was trying to think of. Now, the Baldur's Gate stuff is still happening. Pillars of something. I have a board game called Pillars of the Earth, but it's not that. Pillars of Eternity, I think, just came out. Well, okay, came out 6 months to a year ago, but it's been out. It was kickstarted. People are still making those Baldur's Gate type of games. Those aren't the ones I love. The ones I love were before that, what led into that, which was the Gold Box series, which is just amazingly... you become entranced in that game. I would sit down and play any of those games. And as a matter of fact, had I prepared better before the show, I would run out right now and go grab all my Gold Box games that I have in boxes because I really love those. I'd play those endlessly. As far as music goes, I guess I was the word that came to mind was actually kind of insulting. I don't mean that. It wasn't exactly. I can't hum any of the tunes from any of the games, but that was probably because of the limitations of the platform that they were on. Although there were fantastic Commodore games that had great music, I don't really remember the music from Pool of Radiance or Curse the Azure Bonds or any of the Pool of Darkness was like, that was, Pool of Darkness was the one, because they had met with game design and technology and created a game that was really immersive. Pool of Darkness was really tops. Pool of Radiance, when I go back and play it, is a little bit like, oh, I can't believe I like that game, you know. But then you get in there and you go, oh, I'm back in Flan again. This is awesome. I'm going to go crazy and just, you know, start doing the things that you do. Go to Zintel's Keep and anyway. So Pool it's enjoyable. So there is a one of the things I wanted to say about bringing that up is I think there's a hole in game development that is that era of games. Like a lot of people who go backwards to be retro game designers will go backwards to a Zelda day because it came up on Nintendo's, or you know, nobody's making Pong. You don't want to go back that far, but there's that space before the Nintendo where there was some really great games that people aren't really making anymore. And I think that the indie community could really benefit from trying to push some of those, because there are a lot of old dudes like me still in the game industry who look forward to those games. And you could introduce those games to a younger crowd and say, you know, before there was a Nintendo, this happened. And they may just get just as immersed in it as I did when I was, you know, in my 20s and those games came out. There is an engine, there is a development environment where you can make gold box games, and I'll put the link in the chat room. It's really cool, and actually I made my own gold box game in that engine as a proposal rather than just writing up a game design doc. I actually designed the thing and said, here, play it, and it was really super fun. It's great.
Is that Pico 8?
It is not. I'm kind of delaying because my brain lost the word again. I know it'll come to me shortly, but
Carl, I wanted to ask you one question. You know, the idea of resurrecting retro games, especially from like sort of the 8-bit pre-console era, pre-console. I don't know historically, you know, the way the timeline falls there. But what would you rather see? You know, when you talk about the idea of resurrecting a retro game, a game that sort of in your memory you remember it as being so perfect. Could be because of your age. It could be because of, you know, the sweetening of the memory over time and the nostalgia. Mm-hmm. You know, like I said earlier, that like Speedball 2, the only way that you need to resurrect that is to bring it back exactly as it is.
Right.
And maybe add like, you know, network play with people, you know, multiplayer network play and stuff like that. Is all you'd really need to add. Just keep the sound, the handling, the music, the graphics all the same, and it will be fantastic. There's one thing to say that, but when you're talking about a game that looks inevitably far more primitive just because of the era that it came from, like the very, very early, like a fine example is Battlezone.
Yeah.
So the original Battlezone had all like these cool vector graphics, of course. I think was it a Williams game? Battlezone? Or was maybe it wasn't Williams. Anyway.
Man, I loved it though. Oh.
Yeah. So, I mean, the idea of resurrecting an old retro game like that, what would you like to see from a modern version? I mean, how would you, if somebody tasked you with creating, you know, some of the, like, for example, the gold box games or these classic games that you love from that era, what do you do? Because you know that, oh, the primitive look of the original was kind of part of its charm. Yeah. But then if you say, well, just release it exactly as it was, then why not just run it through an emulator? Why even bother releasing it?
Exactly.
You know, if anybody can just play it anyway. And if you say, well, okay, we'll upgrade the graphics, but we'll keep the sound, but then that doesn't really work because if you've got these like, you know, really crisp modern day graphics with sound, that doesn't really work out. And so, how do you approach modernizing a game of that era and still keeping the same charm? What do you want to see in a re-released version?
So you've hit on a topic that I embarrassingly am very opinionated about and completely wrong. I used to get really ticked off at all the indie studios. Well, that's an over-exaggeration. I think it really ticked off. But it bothered me that indie studios kind of were phoning it in, right? They would say, oh, I love this Nintendo game, so I'm going to create something that just looks like a Nintendo game. And I would think, Jesus, man, put some effort into your work, you know? But you bring up a great point. It's like, well, what are you going to do? I'm trying, you know, one of the easiest things for indie studios to do is to create a side-scrolling game. It's affordable. It can be done quickly. You know, they need to get that first game out the door so that they can start making some money. You know, and do bigger and better games later. You know, and the selfish part of me says, "Come on, man, try something." But trying costs money, and that's going to take time, and it takes a team, and they're not there yet. Maybe this indie studio, so they're saying, we really want to be a successful game company. We want to make games that we love, and there are certain games that we love that we could put out fairly quickly and fairly inexpensively. And when I see that, I sometimes forget, and I go, oh, they're just phoning it in. I have to be reminded. So with that, I fully admit that I'm an old curmudgeon, like get off my digital lawn kind of guy with that. And then I realized that they actually did exactly what they needed to do. If they want to fill you with an interest in this game, not only is it something they're interested in from their past, but they're kind of betting that people that are going to buy the game are also equally interested in this from the past. Why am I stuck on that? You know how many times I've turned off the camera? Not that I want people looking at me, but I keep turning off the camera so it's not stuck on Alex all day. Anyway, so they're saying there might be people in the future who are also interested in playing this game, and so we can't offend those people by going too far afield. We have to keep it kind of true. We have to, respect the graphics and the sound. And so, if somebody were to release a Gold Box game today that I would want to play, I want a new story. That's what I want. Number one, I want a new story. Number two, I want to also feel like I'm being transported back to my youth in some way, back to the day where this game was big, and I was really, really digging it. And so if they're going to do that, they have to have these kind of moments of nostalgia. I think if they actually just make the whole thing nostalgic, then they've gone too far. But like your ice cream sound or your the goal sound, they don't necessarily have to have this modern score with it. But I would expect them to do something different that's a little more meaningful by today's standard, and then have that ice cream thing happen in the background. And then I'll go, oh my God, I remember that from when I was a kid. I'll love that. Now, if they make it just a score of what the Gold Box game sounded like, as I already said, and Matt Uhlman busted me in the chat room by choosing the word that I was afraid to say. It was kind of unforgettable. I didn't really remember, there was nothing momentous about the score. And so if somebody said, I'm going to do the same thing for a Gold Box game, they're going to lose me on that regard. I'm not interested. I want to see a new story. I want to hear some great music. I want to hear some great sound design, and I want there to be these moments that remind me of the past games. And
yeah, I think,
yeah, go ahead. Are you going to go to Vince? Because Vince wanted to say something here.
Vince is here now, I think. You with us, Vince?
I think so. How's this?
Yes.
Oh, Vince is with us. 6 minutes to the end, and Vince arrives.
Oh my God! Sorry, guys.
No, please, man, dig in.
So what do you think, Vince? What do you think is important in resurrecting games from era where technology and the art is completely different?
Well, the thing is, ostensibly, when you're making games, your product is the game, but that's not your true product. The real product is actually the play and the players themselves. You create the actual play that is experienced between the player and the game. And actually, you're creating the players themselves, because when the player plays the game, after he plays the game, he becomes a different person. And that's really what happens. When a person acquires particular skills, and okay, there's story, there's music, there's sound, there's all that, but when you're making this game, this experience, I think it's really important to be focused on, is the person that's going to come out of this game experience going to be, proud of who he's become? I think this is one of the reasons why I have such a bias towards games of skill that reward physical virtuosity, because as a player, I look at these games and I find, wow, my hands are able to do something that they have not done before. The way that I actually look at the screen, my eyes are actually able to parse things that I had not thought to parse, and that feels meaningful to me. Of course, it's not just with skill things, but also things like story. You're presented a story. You're presented moral dilemmas. You're presented player relationships. And if you care about those things and you use that to direct what the actual game experience that you're actually designing is going to be, I think that you will more hit the mark when it comes to making something that starts out as a nostalgia project or a retro project than not.
Well, spoken from the audio director at that game company, one of the greatest companies at generating those kind of immersive and emotional games. I mean, you guys really hit it on the mark every time.
Well, it's interesting. Like Genova, he has very strong opinions about what constitutes a worthwhile game experience. And I also have my own very strong opinions about what constitutes something worthwhile, and they don't actually totally overlap. But the fact that we care so much about that and creating those targets, and we use that to drive our own development processes, and we work together in that way, I think that's why we continue to work together like this.
That's beautiful. Yeah. I mean, isn't that the goal? How many times have you read an article or heard somebody say that they want games to be more and more emotional, so you're really feeling what's going on? You know, there are some articles that say that's impossible to do. Every time that camera comes in on me, I see my wacky hair. I'll cut it before next show. Somebody talk. But basically, yeah, it's terrible.
Yeah,
some people believe you can't reach that emotional level, and certainly games have not yet done it. But for me, it's a very rare movie that actually touches me as well, which I would say is the height of kind of a witnessed media. Although games have the advantage of being interactive as well, it's still very very difficult to hit that point where I'm emotionally involved. And I think that what holds me back from that is graphics more than storyline. And I think that people try to make up for that lack of the not reaching the uncanny valley really by hitting a harder or deeper storyline, and I think that does a disservice. But in some ways, that game company has balanced that kind of graphic storyline involvement very well, straddled that line better than anybody I can think of. And I'm not just saying that because Vince is in the chat room or in the video, but yeah, you guys are doing something right over there and getting some emotional response from people.
I agree. I think with retro games, it's useful to be able to try and narrow down the focus so that you focus in on the areas of the game that are deficient by modern standards, and the areas of the game that are just as powerful then as they could be now if they were untouched. So, for example, in the case of Speedball 2, it wasn't really the graphics that is timeless, in a sense, but some of those sounds and the crisp, responsive gameplay is timeless in that you play the original version and you feel it's just as fun. So you swap out the graphics. You swap out the graphics, and basically you've still retained the original core of what made it fun in the first place. So Elite is another example of that. Like the graphics, the original Elite graphics, that is just vector art. There's nothing about the graphics that would move you at all. But what was wonderful about the original Elite, that you play it and you still feel the same, is that sense of this massive, expansive universe with all of that potential and possibility. And it's sort of a traveling experience. You go from here, you buy your stuff, you go into hyperspace, you go through a few pirate ambushes, and then you land on the station. So that kind of game loop on the old version that's the part that's sort of up to par with a modern experience that you would really enjoy. You don't need to change that. And that's the reason why with Elite Dangerous, I mean, it's done by the same people, so of course it's going to be fairly in line with the original intention, but they didn't touch that gameplay loop at all. It's still exactly the same, but it's just far more realistic, and it just sounds far more evocative. So you've brought the parts of the original that are deficient because of technological limitations up to scratch with the actual experience that hasn't changed in the original or now. Mm-hmm. There are games that do it the other way around as well, where the original graphics is what is very evocative and very, arguably some of those early Nintendo games as well. The graphics are so endearing, and they're so that's why you get all of these pixelated indie games. because they're going for that sort of that era and that feeling of that sort of primitive, chunky kind of graphics. And in those cases as well, okay, in that case, maybe bringing up, like improving the graphics is not what you need to do, because that was what was evocative and is sort of on scratch with a modern experience, and that's the timeless part of the game. So I suppose, yeah, I guess I feel that locating the parts of the game that are timeless, that's really hard because, of course, you ask 5 people what they liked about any arbitrary retro game, and they'll give you 5 different answers. But yeah, I guess sort of that kind of discussion, and sort of not so much you're right and I'm wrong, but just sort of working out which parts could be,
which one's got the most votes.
Yeah, which could be brought forward, effectively to create that similar kind of experience.
That's a real challenge for indie developers to,
Well, not just indie developers. I mean, also, larger studios who are tasked with making remakes of classic franchises. That's arguably harder because you've got more resources and, the limits. There's less limitations there, and
that's not enough of that though. Like I was just thinking, what old game is Activision making? I don't think they're doing it at all. Maybe EA is in touch with that more. I think Activision just looks forward and cashes in on, known franchises. I mean, Guitar Hero just came out again.
Tony Hawk.
Oh my God, yeah, that's embarrassing. So, yeah, but there aren't enough big. But if you think about a big studio, there's not a lot of. I think there's a lot of danger in trying to capture. There's got to be a reason for them to try to go backwards in time, right? If they've got 5 or 6 franchises that sell a lot, just make more of those. That's what I mean, that's not just the game industry that does that. I mean, there's plenty of examples throughout all of capitalism that does that kind of thing. But we would like to see them not just hang their hat on these 2 or 3 franchises that make a lot of money because they've got this huge machine and all of these talented people. Imagine what kind of awesome games Activision could put out if they would just reach beyond the obvious remakes. Typically, I think Activision just buys up studios and then lets them make the game and then sees how it turns out. Then that can be very dangerous, and that's why I'm not going to be an idiot here and act like the game industry is in this wonderful state of euphoria. It's a dangerous place to be. There's a lot of layoffs, and a lot of companies being bought up, and a lot of indies breaking out because they got laid off from their previous job, and it's really sad to see that. But I think that the creativity is going to happen in the indie. Oh well, I'm not like, who am I, Albert Einstein of game industry? Everybody can clearly see that the indie world is where creativity is going to happen. The big AAA game world is maybe there's some people that are trying to get out and do some interesting things, but mostly they have to answer to their chair people, and so they have to hit these marks, and those marks can be more easily hit by re-releasing a Call of Duty than it is to let's go back and start making some gold box games again, because there seems to be some people who want to see them. Do you guys think the game industry is in a dangerous spot where it comes? Wait a minute, let me ask it this way. 5 years from now, where's the game industry?
I would like to think that they will have figured out how to justify the creation of games that are not either dirt cheap or extremely expensive. It's, of course we're going to make a Call of Duty. We're going to make some such $10+ million budget game.
Mm-hmm.
But how do you make a $1 million game? No one knows how to make a $1 million game. Like, publishers don't understand why developers would want to make a $1 million game if they present them with a $1 million game.
Yeah.
They do, however, understand, you're one dude who wants to make this game over a few months for $10,000. Okay, we get that. And we get that $10 million+ game. We understand how the return on investment works on both of those scenarios, but we don't get this big middle space where there's actually a lot of people who want to work there, making interesting games that need enough in order to show, a particular design, a particular aesthetic, a particular narrative concept, whatever, in enough of the right way. It's funny. It's funny the way that budgets are working right now.
I think just before we end, I think the game industry at the moment is fantastic. I'm going to say it.
I'd love to hear that. Hit me.
I'm going to say it. I think
Get me off my jaded stool.
Yeah, I think that we have every reason to feel really, really positive about being involved in the game industry right now. Just from, I mean, the amount of stuff there's a broad spectrum. You know, you've got mobile games, love them or hate them, they're significant. They're getting a lot of people who had never sort of even thought about playing games before into at least sort of removing some of the stigma associated with playing games. And maybe those people are enjoying really full, interesting experiences on their mobile devices, and maybe it ends there, or maybe they're thinking, oh, this is really cool. I might buy myself one of those, PlayStation thingies and see what that's about. Or, you've got that space. You've got the sort of independent. I really don't like the word indie as a label, but I guess it's sort of independent, smaller groups experimenting with some very, very interesting ideas. Very experimental. The sort of the art side of game design is being unless people have this silly debate about, is game design art or not? Of course it's freaking art. And, that's less of an issue now, and it's sort of, it's maturing and people are taking it more seriously, and you're seeing a lot of that in the smaller developments. You're also getting the sort of middle area of, I think they call it triple I.
Yeah.
If you don't like the term indie, then you hate the term triple indie, but, sort of fairly more substantial budget independent games. And actually, Vitae Backroom, where I work, at the moment, we are in that bracket, so we're very fortunate
that game company is Triple I.
Yeah, they would definitely be considered a AAA game.
Yeah, I think the future, I believe, is going to just show more of that space developing, and of course, some of those will get to be the really super big budget, big business kind of things. That's fine. It's this is the way an industry works. Everything changes and moves around. And in the AAA space, where you've got the really, really big publishers with the super big budget games, sure, from a game designer point of view, some of them may be, I guess, questionable as far as the balance between commercial, business, marketing, and art goes. Some of those motivations may be questionable, but again, like mobile games, love it or hate it, it's significant.
Yeah.
And, there are you can criticize AAA games all you like, but there are thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of people all over the world really enjoying their AAA games right now.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And there's a theory that when you have cancer, if you remove the largest of the cancer, the small cancer will spread through, as if that large cancer is kind of a blockade, right? And by cancer, I mean bad. And there is that thought that if you remove this AAA kind of side of things, that it could cause a collapse in the smaller industry, in the smaller indie studios. Mm-hmm. And I totally believe in that. I totally see that as a possibility. I'm not saying that AAA studios are bad, not by any stretch of the definition, but what I do wish they would do is take a fraction of that talent pool that they have and look for a solution for the future of the game industry. That's what I want them to do. Here is a bunch of people that are extremely good at what they do, and you've got the deep pockets to be able to support it. Save the industry that you are part of, rather than just keep kind of, eating away at it.
Yeah, I think
that's what I don't see enough of. Absolutely, we need our Call of Duties. We need our Guitar Heroes. Hey, who am I to, scoff at anybody? I mean, Freestyle Games is putting out a fantastic Guitar Hero. Good for them. I couldn't be more proud. But at the same time, Activision, please take an R&D department and start hitting on this area that's going to keep us propelled into the future, because people aren't going to stop wanting to play games. But games may stop being available.
I think, though, as far as the artistic, there was an interview by GameSpot with David Braben from Frontier, who made Elite, the original and the latest one, and he is saying that 10, 15 years ago, you're seeing basically things driving around the same kind of this type of game and this type of game and this type of game along the spectrum, and now thanks to the increasing success of mobile games and the increased success of, smaller groups becoming larger AAA companies and stuff like that, we're seeing more sort of interesting games that come in between these gaps along the spectrum of different game design, which is fantastic. And that's the reason why, you know, whenever people are really cynical about the state of the game industry and the state of games and the art of game design and indies and all of this, I always feel that, well, you know, you step back a little bit, have a look at where gaming was in the 80s and the 90s, and you know, you have a look at where it is now, and you have a look at the general impression that the public has of it. The accessibility for people who regularly wouldn't play games, and also the range of interesting things and interesting options for people who do play games, and also look at the historic perspective on what we've learnt from, you know, retro games of the past, the technology involved, the graphics, of course, you know, the audio, what we do, the tools that we have available. I think it's fantastic. I mean, it may not, who knows, it may go down, it may go up, who knows what's going to happen in the future, but yeah, I think right now, I think we're in a really good place.
Yeah, you know, you make a good point. And at the end of the day, I've learned in my time to be very grateful for what I can do, and what we get to do as game audio people. There wasn't a time where people could sit down and write music and get paid for it, you know, like we do now in the game industry. If you start to point at a decade and you say, oh, there were, in the 1800s, thousands of people writing classical music. There certainly were, but we now know of, you know, 50 of them. And, you know, in the 1970s, when rock bands were really at their heights, there were millions of them, and we know of, you know, a few thousand. So it's fantastic that the games have allowed us as game audio people to do sound design, to do music, and to do voiceovers, and to bring our skills forward. You know, I try to remind myself of that and say, I'm very lucky that when this show ends, I get to go write some music now for a game, which is a wonderful, wonderful thing, because that's all I really ever wanted to do anyway. So
absolutely, I think if we all time warp ourselves back to when we were children playing these classic games that we've talked about in today's episode, and you were sitting there next to yourself, you know, the 10-year-old, 15-year-old self, and you said, hey, you know, in the future, you're going to earn money from making sound for this. You just kind of, your brain pops. That's so cool. I'm going to be making music and sound effects for games. That's so cool. That's rad, man. Well, that's what we would have said in Australia.
But I would like to say that with that added, my parents they did their very best to get me off of this sniff, right? They were, I remember my dad said, what do you want to do? I said, I want to play music. He's like, oh, you're an idiot. What are you thinking? I want to get paid to play music. That's not possible. So I went to college and I studied music and psychology. He's like, okay, you have to study something that will make a paycheck. This is a true story. And I said, okay. The only other thing I was interested in, it was because of the Police's synchronicity, I started reading up on Carl Jung. And it's like, well, I'm going to study Jungian psychology. He's like, okay, so there you go. That's going to be your career. And then I got out of college and I started playing in bands in LA, and it wasn't going very well as that happens. I was sleeping on couches. Dad's like, what do you want to do? I'm going to go back to college. He's all excited. What are you going to do? I said, I'm going to go to UCSB and I'm going to study archaeology. And he's like, you do not want to make any money? That's a true story. That's what Dad said to me. Music and archaeology. You don't want to make money. So why don't you just do the psychology thing? And I said, because I hate it and it's horrible and I could care less about people's problems. It's a true story. Maybe I'm giving up too much. But in the end, so Guitar Hero comes out. Fast forward. I've worked on The Sims. I've done Burnout. I'm feeling pretty good about my career. And Guitar Hero hits, and then my parents are standing in line at Walmart, and they're like the proudest people in the world. They're like, hey, my son works on this game. If they could see people buying it, right? And Dad calls me up and he goes, you were determined to prove me wrong, weren't you? I said, absolutely. You know, you can make money, you can make a living off of writing music and doing sound design if you get into the game industry. It's going to be very difficult to do that in the movie industry. Maybe the TV industry is easier, but the game industry still has a place for us, you know, and I thought it was very wonderful to prove him wrong. Anyway, I'll leave it at that note. I'm sure you guys have your own stories.
We should probably finish up, I think.
Yeah. All right. Hey, thanks, Chaddies, for joining in. Vince,
one more topic that
I'm sorry, Vince. Did you get a chance with all the ins and outs to speak your mind? Because I don't want to.
I know it's. No, there's all sorts of things. Let's see here. You know that Doremi Fantasy? That was actually on the Wii Shop in the U.S. even.
Oh my God.
Oh really?
Yeah, it was. It didn't come out on the Super Nintendo, but they did bring it out in the U.S. on the Wii Shop. Not on a Wii U, though. So if you got a Wii U, you cannot get it. Actually, if you got a Wii, you can't get it either because they shut down that portion of the eShop.
I would like to say that Do Re Mi Fantasy is Milan's heart-pounding great adventure.
Heart-pounding great adventure. That's what they called it, is it?
Yes.
I called it. I think I said nerve-wracking big adventure is the way I translated it. But.
Well, it's either way. I think it's both heart-pounding and nerve-wracking.
Yeah, there's that. What else was there? There was something about Hudson. Oh, I wanted to say that. Well, there are a lot of games that I wish were still being made, and I go back to play them. But it's amazing with Hudson. So Hudson was acquired by Konami, and they're just sitting on those titles. But besides things like Milan stuff, there's some rather well-known things. For example, Bomberman. It's been forever since Bomberman.
Oh man,
Bomberman is dead now. It's so
Bomberman.
It's amazing to think that we've lost Bomberman.
Has anybody done a Paperboy as well? Because that was in my list.
Ooh, Paperboy.
Paperboy. Guys, we better stop this. This is going to go on forever. We're the Game Audio Hour, not Game Audio 2 hours.
We need to let Vince finish. And Vince, I'm sorry, I initiated the cutting you off, so I apologize.
Oh no, it's there's something about a lot of those old school games. We talk about with a lot of modern games that have lots of demands because they're very asset heavy. You have all of these different mechanical and graphical motivations for having sound in the scene, and then you go to something like Bomberman. What do you have? You have the sounds of bombs, and you've got the sounds of picking up items, and just a very few things that are going to be used extensively throughout the hours and hours that you play them. And it's amazing actually listening to these really quite clear and communicative soundscapes that have an elegance to them, despite being, well, they're elegant and they're incredibly simple what they're comprised of in terms of the audio assets, and it's so cool going back to them and thinking, wow, this actually sounds great. It's not the sophisticated stuff with all the RTPCs all over the place and crazy stereo panning and 3D auralization and whatnot. I like going back to those things that have such a clear, really clearly communicated state of the game using these very simple audio assets, and it's kind of heartwarming that.
Yeah, I agree. As a matter of fact, well, anyway, I'm going to let it go. So we can end the show.
But
Vince brings up a great point. Absolutely. Hey,
there's actually one other technical topic that I want to talk to Vince about, but let's do that next week.
Okay. First thing.
Actually, Vince, are you going to be on the show next week?
Well, I might be. That would be Tuesday at 10 a.m. Oh, yeah. I might be broadcasting from Japan.
That's right. Vince is coming to see me next week. And for anybody who's interested, Vince and I are going to have dinner on next Wednesday night with a very special person. I'm really looking forward to it. We're going to be eating with Manami Matsumaya, a legend in game audio from, of course, Mega Man and many countless Capcom titles, and everybody knows who Manami Matsumaya is. She lives in Osaka, and I met her at Bit Summit, and she's just a super nice person. So I'm going to get to be the interpreter between Matsumaya-san and the mighty Vince Diamante. So that's going to be fantastic. If you have any questions that you want us to ask her, then let us know next week.
Are you going to broadcast that live? Because I am totally jealous.
Well, it's going to be in a restaurant, so I don't know that we can. I don't know if that's going to be possible, but. Yeah, it's going to be really great. I'm really looking forward. So, yeah, Vince is coming to see me, and we're gonna hit up the town. I don't know what we're going to do. Walk around a bit.
Maybe find some old analog synths, perhaps.
Ooh, don't make me jealous. Stop
we
it.
tried that last time, but I didn't have the good locations last time. I may do some research this time.
Hey, how long's the flight to get there?
From San Francisco, I don't know from LA.
14 hours?
Yeah, it's about 14 hours.
The longest flight I ever had was 19 hours, and I'm now afraid of anything more than 5 hours.
Well,
right,
a good stiff drink. Yeah.
All right. Well, anyway, I'm coming that way, or Alex, I'll see you again at GDC. So I ended the show on a link that I put in the chat room to B-17 Bomber from the Intellivision, which was an awesome sound, by the way, speaking about cool sounds that Vince was, I think, referring to in the previous part. So, hey, chatties, thanks for joining us. I got dropped. I was going to say goodbye, and then I had to log back in and listen to people and do screenshots. And okay, Isotope, thank you for supporting our show. We can't be more proud that you guys are hanging out with us and you know, offering us a giveaway that we do on occasion. Last week's winner was, can you remember the name? I'm sorry, the name is escaping me.
It was Valerie.
It's Valerie. Valerie Stagaman.
That's awesome. I hope, Valerie, you are loving the software and it's bringing a lot of creativity and future gigs to you. That would be fantastic. Thank you, Isotope. Thank you, guys, for being here. Thank you, chatties, for supporting us. Please tweet us. Please follow us on Twitter. Please like us on Facebook. Please subscribe to us on YouTube. I think I got them all right. Did I do it right?
Well done.
Holy cow! For such a Luddite, I did it right. And we'll see you next week. Bye.
Whew.